Tonight at 10, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is cleared by Durham police of breaking lockdown rules. He'd promised to resign if he was fined following an event last April. He insisted today that honesty and integrity matter.
It shouldn't be controversial to say that those who make the law can't break the law.
And with the Conservative leadership contest underway, the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak formally joins the race to replace Boris Johnson. We'll be live at Westminster at the end of a turbulent week in British politics. Also on the programme. Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been shot dead during a campaign rally. Police say the suspect used a handmade gun. The US President Joe Biden signs an executive order to help safeguard access to abortion following the Supreme Court overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Game, set and match.
And at Wimbledon, the defending men's champion proves too much for Britain's Cameron Norrie. Novak Djokovic books his place in Sunday's final.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, the latest...
Hello, good evening. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer and his deputy Angela Rayner have been cleared by Durham police of breaking lockdown rules. The force was looking into an event last April during election campaigning when Sir Keir was pictured drinking a beer in the office of another Labour MP. He'd promised to resign if he was fined. At the time, indoor socialising between different households was banned. But today, the police said there was no case to answer because of an exemption to lockdown rules for reasonably necessary work. Our political editor, Chris Mason, is at Westminster tonight. Chris.
Jane, tonight we could have been talking about another leadership race here at Westminster. The day after Boris Johnson announced his resignation, we could have been reporting on Sir Keir Starmer's resignation as well. But that won't be happening, courtesy of a decision in Durham, meaning Sir Keir will be sticking around. April of last year, Sir Keir Starmer's having a beer and a curry. Was this in breach of the COVID rules at the time? Durham Constabulary looked into it and today said no.
People said to me I was taking a risk by saying I would step down if I was fined. But it was never about that. For me, it was a matter of principle. It shouldn't be controversial to say that those who make the law can't break the law.
Have you heard from Durham Police, Sir Keir? Any comment on their investigation?
It was the day after the local elections in May that Keir Starmer and his deputy Angela Rayner found out that they were under investigation by the police. It all related to an event in this building, which includes the office of the Labour MP for Durham. Labour always argued they were working at the time. All this was potentially deeply awkward for Sir Keir because when Boris Johnson and the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak were fined for this birthday gathering in Downing Street, the Labour leader had called for them to resign.
The guilty men are the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. They've dishonoured all of that sacrifice.
Afternoon.
And when Durham police started their investigation into him, he said,
If the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down.
The investigation effectively hit the pause button on his leadership for 2 months, with the prospect that his career could be about to be over. Sir Keir used his words to draw a contrast between what he saw as his integrity and the Prime Minister's lack of it. But of course, Mr Johnson has now resigned.
Chris, I think we've got you first.
Sir Keir, whilst you must be relieved, isn't this the week that your job has actually got much harder with the resignation of Boris Johnson, the man you've defined yourself against?
No, not in the slightest. The contrast between the Tory party, which is tearing itself apart, with a cast list of wannabe leaders who've all propped up this Prime Minister for months and months and months, knowing he's unfit for office. Contrast that to the Labour Party.
Keir Starmer is staying, his opponent is changing.
Thank you all very much.
But who will it soon be? Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
Well, that race to succeed the Prime Minister is very much underway. Let's have a look at how it's all unfolding. Rishi Sunak launched his campaign today, joining Suella Braverman and Tom Tugendhat in publicly declaring. Others are expected to do so in the coming days. Most of these MPs and ministers haven't yet officially said that they want the job, but they're considered ones to watch. It's likely to be a crowded field. So what happens next? Well, it is the group of backbench Tory MPs, the 1922 Executive Committee, that formally decides the timescale of the contest. The committee is due to meet on Monday. So after that, we should know more about how long the process will take and the rules around it. To be eligible to run, at least as far as the rules stand at the moment, someone needs the backing of at least 8 MPs. All Tory MPs vote to whittle down that list. That happens over a number of days until just 2 candidates are left. And then at that point, every member of the Conservative Party gets a vote on those final 2. That's about 200,000 people. In the past, candidates have held hustings where they address voters around the country. Whoever gets the most votes in that ballot becomes leader of the Conservative Party and, of course, therefore, Prime Minister. Our political correspondent, Alex Forsyth, has this report.
The leadership race is on.
Will you be standing for the leadership?
Though this morning, potential candidates were keeping quiet.
Are you going to be the next Prime Minister?
No answer first thing from the former Chancellor. Then this afternoon, there was this.
I'm standing to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and your Prime Minister.
Rishi Sunak, one of the first to quit Boris Johnson's government, today launched a slick campaign on social media for his job. He's not the only one. Tom Tugendhat's announced he'd run this morning. The Attorney General, Suella Braverman's already thrown her hat in. The possible contenders are piling up. Some familiar, some less so. They'll be courting supporters, weighing their chances and preparing their campaigns. And while some want a quick contest to replace the Prime Minister, others say it's got to be thorough if the party's to rebuild.
The Conservative Party has a choice. It can fall into fractious infighting, whoever leads it, or it can try and get behind the new leader and prepare for the general election. A general election which, by the way, may be beyond any leader winning given the state of the economy and what's happened over the past few weeks and months.
It's in here the first decisions will be made. MPs whittle down the long list to just 2 candidates. Then in theory, it's up to party members, though some have suggested that process could be cut out.
I'm from Cheshire and Amersham.
Not an idea welcomed by these young Conservatives from around the country.
There is more to a party than just what happens in Westminster. Us people at grassroots level are the ones who perhaps feel the wrath on the doorstep a lot more than those in Westminster.
To restore the faith in the government, I want to see more integrity, more honesty from leaders. And I don't know, if you don't pass that on to members who are voting, whether you will get that.
Better to take a bit longer and have to sort of work some out in the meantime than choose quickly and choose wrong.
Westminster has calmed after the high drama of yesterday, but away from the microphones, there is still manoeuvring. Boris Johnson's been clear he's staying on as Prime Minister until a new party leader's chosen, even though some of his critics want him to go sooner. Number 10 says it will keep things running, but it won't announce new policy or make big economic decisions. So the man in the highest office has only limited power. For now, though, he remains in residence behind the famous black door, while his party wrangles over what and who comes next. Alex Forsyth, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, uncertainty about who will lead the government comes as it faces some difficult choices. There are pressing questions about the direction of the economy, the demand on the NHS and trade policy in Northern Ireland due to Brexit. Our correspondents and editors have been considering some of the challenges ahead.
Earlier this week, before the Prime Minister's resignation speech, the plan was that the new Chancellor would review all tax and spend policy with nothing off the table. So potentially a cut to VAT, a fast-tracking of a planned income tax rise, perhaps cancelling the planned rise in corporation tax. That is now all being left to a new Prime Minister. But there are important decisions that will need to be made in the coming weeks. For example, Ofgem is planning to set a new level for the energy price cap for winter. That could be above £3,000. Surely the government will want to respond in some way. And then there's public sector pay. The review bodies have been reporting back to government. Government has to respond with inflation above 9%. What are they going to do? Time is running out.
Health chiefs have already warned that the next couple of years could be even tougher for the NHS than during the pandemic. Hospitals are under extreme pressure, with more patients coming forward, some who held back during the lockdowns. Ambulances are often delayed, A&E units are overcrowded. There's a backlog of people waiting for planned treatment, operations like hip and knee replacements. And social care is extremely stretched. That means hospitals sometimes can't discharge patients who are medically fit to leave, so making it harder to find beds for those coming in. And there's a COVID risk, with infections and hospital admissions rising. Add to that a possible row with health unions over pay, and there's a lot for the NHS and social care to face up to, and ministers across the UK's nations.
Under Boris Johnson, controversial new legislation had been set in motion to override part of the Brexit agreement, the Northern Ireland Protocol, which has created a new trade border in the Irish Sea. It's bitterly disliked by unionists here, and the aim has been to remove the need for new checks on goods coming to Northern Ireland and to pave the way for the Democratic Unionist Party to get back into Stormont, because currently Northern Ireland doesn't have a functioning government at all. So while a new Conservative leader is being elected, it's understood that protocol legislation will continue through Parliament for now. But it will be strongly opposed by nationalist and cross-community political leaders here, and by some in the Conservative Party itself, who see it as breaking an international agreement. So any new Prime Minister will have this big divide to deal with, and it's likely to be a feature of the leadership election.
Emma Vardy there, along with Hugh Pym and Faisal Islam. Well, one of Boris Johnson's main policies was what he described as levelling up the country in terms of investment and opportunities. But some local leaders are now concerned that the policy might not be a priority for the new leadership. Our special correspondent Ed Thomas has been to Lee in Greater Manchester, which turned Conservative for the first time at the 2019 general election.
It's 50 years since Astley Mine closed, and with it, thousands of jobs lost. Once again, troubled days are back in Lee, a town that believed in the promises of Boris Johnson.
2019, Boris Johnson levelling up, transforming places like Lee. What does that mean to you?
Not much. We're still as unlevel as we were. This town is dying on its feet.
Boris Johnson as Prime Minister meant hope for the Walsh family. Now their faith is shattered.
Too many lies, dishonesty. It's not right.
Has life got worse for you over the past 3 years?
Yeah, bills rising. I've been at food banks. You have to cut down on your food, whether or not you need a bath every day and clean your kids. And
it's basically as though we're begging for help now. I was happy to think that maybe, you never know, this time, this Prime Minister would actually do a bit better, but obviously not.
2 for £5 on the pillars, 2 for 5.
Lee is still to benefit from levelling up cash, money to hopefully transform the town centre. Too late for Natalie's business. She's cutting costs, moving online, leaving the high street.
People coming in, there's families that they always want payment plans and things like that because they literally haven't got any spare money left.
When people say to you levelling up,
yeah,
what does that actually mean to you now, 3 years on?
It's supposed to make the town nicer and make it a nicer environment for everybody, and look around. There's nothing been done at all.
I voted Tory for the first time in my life.
For Delia, there's unfinished business, a belief that Boris Johnson should have been allowed to finish the job.
So what do you want to say to people in the Conservative Party who basically said, enough Boris Johnson,
They've
it's
stabbed
over?
him in the back. They're supposed to be Tories, they're supposed to stand by him, and they've not done.
So what next for towns like Lee?
This is
absolutely the defining moment for this government. Either they stay the course on levelling up, or they turn back and they will never be forgiven.
Henry Murison is worried. A former Labour councillor, he's now in charge of George Osborne's Northern Powerhouse Group.
If the promises of 2019, levelling up, does not materialise, what are the dangers?
It's the end of the Conservatives in the north of England. It'll be the end of the trust in faith in Westminster. And finally, it'll be economically an absolute disaster.
The hope is that promises made are promises kept. Thomas, BBC News, Leigh.
Well, let's hear more tonight from our political editor, Chris Mason. At the end, Chris, of an absolutely extraordinary week. What is your assessment of the state of British politics now?
Well, firstly, Jane, I would say that Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, is mighty relieved tonight because his career could have been over. And instead, next week, he'll be able to start setting out the positive case, as he would see it, for why people should vote Labour under his leadership at the next election. But this whole process with the police has gone on for so long that Boris Johnson, his principal opponent, has resigned. And Mr Johnson, because of all of his political woes in the last few months, has been a political target the size of a barn door for the Labour leader. And instead, Sir Keir will now face, well, a set of moving targets, all of these wannabe prime ministers who are contesting the Conservative leadership. So that's Sir Keir Starmer. What about the Conservatives? They will start setting out their stalls. It's happening already. You'll see articles in the newspapers over the weekend. They are trying to grapple with finding answers to a huge question. What does it mean to be a Conservative in 2022? We see a government at the moment that is high spending and high taxing. Will they want to continue with that? What about health and education and defence and foreign affairs? Huge questions for them to wrestle with as a flotilla of Conservative wannabes. Huge questions too for Sir Keir Starmer and the leaders of the other parties too. What has happened this week has started to reshape British politics in the countdown to the next election.
Chris, thank you. Chris Mason. And you can find updates and more analysis, including the latest on who is intending to run in that Conservative leadership race, on BBC News Online, bbc.co.uk/news, or by using the BBC News app. Japan's former and longest-serving Prime Minister has been assassinated during a campaign rally. Shinzo Abe was shot at close range while making a speech in Nara in the west of the country. He was taken to hospital by helicopter, but doctors were unable to save him. Police arrested a 41-year-old man shortly after the attack. There is shock and disbelief in Japan, which has low rates of violent crime and tough gun laws. From Nara, our correspondent Rupert Wingfield-Hayes reports.
This was Shinzo Abe this morning, standing on a street corner, rallying support for his party in Sunday's parliamentary elections. Lurking a few metres away, this man was caught on camera by a local TV crew. Then suddenly, two very loud bangs rang out. Mr Abe's bodyguards are on the assailant in seconds. Lying on the street, a strange-looking gun made of steel pipes and held together with black tape. The former Prime Minister is flown to a nearby hospital, but the news is bad. He has been hit in the back and neck, and his heart has stopped.
This is where Mr Abe was brought, and this is where doctors worked for hours to try and save his life. And it was from here at a little after 5 this evening that we got the news that Mr Abe had died. Tonight, the whole of Japan is in shock. There have been political assassinations here before, but nothing like this, certainly not in more than half a century.
I was really shocked, this lady says. I never thought a gun would be used. Using a gun in Japan? I've never heard of this. It seems guns are becoming more common, her husband says. That makes me feel very sad. Back in Tokyo, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida could barely hold back the tears as he went before the media. I prayed that somehow his life would be spared, he says, but unfortunately, he has gone. This is a terrible day. I have no words. This evening, police began searching the suspect's home. reportedly finding more homemade firearms, but no clear motive. From around the world, the tributes have been pouring in, from President Joe Biden to Boris Johnson and Mr. Abe's old golfing partner, Donald Trump. Shinzo Abe certainly had his detractors too, not the least of which was China's President Xi Jinping. But he brought Japan and America closer together than ever before. He championed free trade in the Pacific and served his country longer than any other leader. For that, he will be remembered.
And Rupert joins us live from Nara. And Rupert, it seems hard to overstate the sheer amount of shock where you are.
Absolutely, Jane. It is hard to overstate the amount of shock. This is just not a country of guns and gun violence. To give you an idea, there are on average fewer than 10 gun-related deaths for the whole of Japan each year. And that's why politicians think it's okay to stand on street corners giving speeches without much protection, without screens, without metal detectors, because this sort of crime is just unthinkable here. It's also profoundly shocking because of who it happened to. It's difficult to overstate just what a huge political figure Shinzo Abe was here. He dominated politics in Japan for a decade like no other modern politician. And he believed that Japan had to stop taking a back seat, stop following other countries like the United States. And they're on issues like Asia-Pacific security, free trade, and particularly on the issue of taking on the challenge of China. Mr. Abe believed that Japan had to step up. It had to once again get over its post-war pacifism and become a leading power in Asia. And I think that will be his deepest and longest-lasting legacy.
Rupert, thank you. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes. The US President Joe Biden has signed an executive order aiming to safeguard women's access to abortion. His move follows the Supreme Court decision last month to overturn the Roe v. Wade ruling that made the procedure legal across the United States. Following that Supreme Court decision, these are the US states that have implemented near total abortion bans with very limited exceptions. And then these states have banned the procedure after 6 weeks. A number of other states are expected to follow suit, while others are scrambling to protect abortion access amid legal challenges. Our North America editor, Sarah Smith, is at the White House tonight. And Sarah, give us a sense of what impact this move by President Biden could have.
Well, President Biden can't do a huge amount about this because he can't overturn the Supreme Court ruling that he said was terrible, extreme and wrong-headed. He doesn't have the power to reverse that. So what he has done today is bring in measures that he hopes will mean that across all 50 states of America there will still be access to abortion pills, which can be taken in the first few weeks of pregnancy. And also measures to try to protect women who live in states where abortion has been banned, to allow them to travel to other states to access a termination without any kind of recriminations against them. And when he was talking about that need to travel from state to state, he became really quite angry and upset as he discussed the case of a 10-year-old girl in Ohio who was raped, found herself 6 weeks pregnant, and had to leave Ohio, where there are no exceptions for rape or incest in their abortion ban, had to travel to another state to get a termination. That kind of thing, he said, just should not be happening in America. Now, he would like to pass a federal law that would guarantee the right to abortion right across the whole of the United States, but he doesn't have enough votes in Congress to do that. So instead, he said if you vote Democrat in November and return more pro-choice lawmakers, that's something he would try to do. And he promised if Republicans try to pass a law banning abortion in all 50 states in America, he'll veto that by refusing to sign it.
Sarah, thank you. Sarah Smith in Washington. Russian forces are continuing their heavy shelling of towns and villages in the east of Ukraine in preparation for an expected new offensive to seize more territory. At the time of Russia's invasion of Ukraine back in February, it controlled Crimea, while parts of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions were held by Russian-backed separatists. Now Russia occupies large areas of the south and east of the country, and it's continuing to push forward in the Donetsk region. The latest Russian target is the city of Sloviansk. From there, Jonathan Beale sent this report.
Near the front line, close to the city of Slavyansk, Ukrainian troops prepare to target Russian positions. They know this next battle will be crucial.
I think that the Slavyansk is the next big aim for Russians.
Do you think you can stop them?
Sure.
You can?
We will. We will.
Blasts of artillery, the familiar sounds of this war. But there's also a quieter, harder to see battle involving drones and electronic warfare, jamming and tracking signals.
The Russians have a lot of stuff for blocking the drones, for blocking the signal with the remote control, with the camera and so on.
It's also a dangerous game of hide and seek, as we soon found out. Just hearing some sound of aircraft, they've told us, the Ukrainian soldiers here, to take cover under the trees. The Russians are flying over these positions, trying to spot where they are.
It's Russians.
They've been using drones, small, cheap ones, to spot enemy positions and direct artillery. They've already lost 5. But they believe they're getting results. Back at base, they're even making their own bombs to target the Russians.
Have confirmed 3 or 4 mortars, 1 tank, maybe up to 100 soldiers, and 5 or 6 ammunition. Yeah. Okay. So we have a good results for the 10 people.
The Russians aren't just tracking their drones, they're also trying to jam communications. But US technology's helping overcome that. At another secret location, they're using one of the thousands of Starlink satellite units provided by Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, Russia, oh, hello, барышня, барышня, там, зв'язок.
The other Western name as popular among Ukrainian troops is Boris Johnson. But even though he'll soon be gone, there's still hope that Britain will continue to back Ukraine.
Now we're defending Western values here. Modernizing our army and providing sufficient weapons will bring peace to your country, to you in Britain.
Russia's already targeting the city of Slavyansk. It still outguns Ukraine and has the advantage in electronic warfare. Homegrown ingenuity and Western support is making a difference. But is it sufficient to halt the Russian advance? Jonathan Beale, BBC News, the Donbass.
Now we'll take a look at some other stories making the news today. Sir Mark Rowley has been named the new Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. He succeeds Dame Cressida Dick, who stood down in February. Sir Mark previously served as head of the Met's counter-terrorism unit. He says he wants to make sure that people's faith in the Met to police by consent is restored. A man has been jailed for life for murdering the police community support officer Julia James. Callum Wheeler, who's 22, attacked Miss James while she was walking her dog in Kent last April. She died from head injuries after being beaten with a metal bar. Wheeler has been told he'll serve a minimum of 37 years. COVID-19 infections are still rising across the UK. The latest figures from the Office for National Statistics show 2.7 million people are estimated to have had the virus last week, up from 2.3 million the week before. Let's find out more from our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, who's joined me. Fergus.
Well, Jane, COVID infections have been rising sharply for the past month, driven by the highly contagious Omicron subvariants BA4 and BA5. The ONS survey shows increases across the UK. In England, 1 in 25 people were infected last week. In Wales, 1 in 20, 1 in 19 in Northern Ireland, and highest of all, 1 in 17 in Scotland, though the rate of growth there is slowing. In all, it's estimated 2.7 million people had COVID, up 18% on the previous week, but that's still well below the levels at the end of March. Now, what really matters is how many people are getting seriously ill. The most up-to-date figures are for hospitals in England, where there are nearly 11,500 patients with COVID. But it was much higher in early April and in the huge peak in January last year. Around 2/3 of those now in hospital with COVID are primarily being treated for another condition. Vaccines are no longer very good at stopping you getting COVID, but they give strong protection against severe illness. Around 1 in 6 over 75s have still not received their latest booster jab, and they're being urged to come forward. Jane.
Fergus, thank you. Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini, who were once in charge of world and European football, have been cleared of corruption by a court in Switzerland. Prosecutors failed to prove that a £1.6 million payment made by the former FIFA boss Blatter to Platini had been illegal. The two men insisted the money was payment for past advisory work. Our sports editor, Dan Rowan, has this report.
Once the most powerful man in football, Sepp Blatter arriving at a Swiss court earlier, the former FIFA president denying wrongdoing ahead of the verdict in his trial for fraud.
I am not innocent in my life, but in this case I am innocent.
Also in court, the man once favourite to succeed Blatter, co-defendant and former UEFA president Michel Platini. The two men were accused of an unlawful payment of £1.6 million between FIFA and Platini in 2011. They said it was backdated pay for advisory work the former French footballing legend had done a decade earlier. A panel of judges today ruling the pair's account of a gentleman's agreement was credible and that doubts existed about the prosecution's claim it was a bribe linked to a Blatter re-election bid. Both men acquitted.
It's justice, but it's a victory for me, definitely. In the case of my job, my work, 44 years working in FIFA, for me is so important. It's so important that this case has been settled on the highest Swiss level.
The payment had emerged amid the corruption scandal that engulfed FIFA in 2015, an FBI investigation sparking Blatter's downfall, with both men then kicked out of football in disgrace and charged by the Swiss authorities. Platini, a man who both captained and coached his country, telling me afterwards how much it meant to have been cleared.
The FIFA never believed me, but the tribunal, the normal tribunal, they trust me, and it's a great victory for me.
Despite his 17-year reign over an organisation that became defined by corruption, this case marked the first time that Blatter had faced criminal charges, and the verdict here today will be a major blow to the Swiss authorities, who must now decide whether to appeal. Dan Rowan, BBC News in Bellinzona.
Cameron Norrie joined an exclusive club of British men today by playing in a Wimbledon singles semi-final. The biggest match of his career was against six-time Wimbledon winner Novak Djokovic. Norrie won the first set, but ultimately couldn't overpower the defending champion. Our sports correspondent Joe Wilson was watching.
What steps these were for Cameron Norrie, following just three British men, Roger Taylor, Tim Henman and Andy Murray, who'd done this before him in the professional era. Now it was his Wimbledon semi-final. Oh, and his too. Novak Djokovic was the overwhelming favourite, with the experience, with the titles, with his very first service game broken.
It's a break, first game.
Norrie burst into the match with a roar of possibility, and in a flash, won the first set 6-2. Honestly, it's there, in black and white. Then Djokovic put on a cap and got his head into the game. And now the reigning champion was reaching everything.
Well, that's good hustle by Djokovic there.
With Norrie 2-1 down, the crowd got chanting. And Norrie did not give up. He's given Wimbledon a great run. But 6-4 in the fourth, the match to Djokovic. He said he was looking at a supporter here. OK, now Cameron Norrie was defeated, but he'd never got this far in a Grand Slam before.
A lot to be proud of, and I think I need just a couple of days to unwind, and I think looking back on it all, it's going to be a lot of positive memories and positive firsts and a lot of things that I ticked off for the first time, so it's been a lot of fun.
And we now anticipate a centre court final between Novak Djokovic and Nick Kyrgios. Djokovic says expect fireworks. I'm standing well back, and this is the business end of the fortnight. Wheelchair tennis moved to court 1 for semi-finals, and in over 3 hours of captivating play, Britain's Alfie Hewitt prevailed. Now that's a finalist feeling. Joe Wilson, BBC News, Wimbledon.
Hot and sunny there. Let's take a look at the weather wherever you are in the country. Hello to Stav Daneos. Hi.
Hi there, Jane. 29 degrees, in fact, southwest London was the hot spot. Good evening to you. It's going to turn hotter this weekend, mainly across southern areas. Northern areas always seeing a bit more cloud around, though Sunday looks like being a sunny and very warm day for all areas. So lots of sunshine through this weekend. That's down to this area of high pressure, which will push towards the eastern side of the country as we move into Sunday and the start of next week. So we'll see higher temperatures as we pick up winds from the south. Through this evening and certainly overnight, there'll be more cloud for the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, some of it running into the northwest of England, North Wales as well. 1 or 2 spots of rain where it'll be breezy in northern Scotland. But further south, a lot of dry weather around under clear skies as temperatures dipping down 10 to 15 degrees pretty typically. Now, we'll have a bit of cloud across central and southern parts of England and Wales to start off with. Plenty of sunshine, though, through the day. So best of the sunshine in the north across southern and eastern Scotland. Some sunshine also getting through for Northern Ireland, but the northwest of Scotland will remain cloudy. Further spots of rain, quite breezy here, so mid-teens at best. Low 20s for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, up to around 25 or 26 in the southeast, so not quite as warm as what we had today. However, through for the final tomorrow, 26 degrees, very pleasant at Wimbledon. But notice that for the men's final on Sunday, 29 or 30 Celsius. Sunday is going to be a warmer day for all areas. Lots of sunshine around, some fairly strong sea breezes picking up as the winds will be light. More sunshine for Scotland and Northern Ireland, so temperatures responding here as well. The low to mid-20s in the warmest spots. High 20s in the southeast, and we could see 29 or 30 degrees somewhere in the southeast. And it gets hotter still Monday and Tuesday in the south, probably the peak of this current warm spell. Low 30s there. There is a chance of some cooler air moving off the Atlantic as a weather front sweeps in. That could bring a little bit of rain in the north, but there isn't much rain in this forecast. And then by the end of the week, it warms up again, certainly into next weekend. Jane.
All right, Stav, thank you very much. Stav Daneos with the latest weather, and that is the BBC News at 10 on Friday, July the 8th. You can see more analysis of all today's main stories over on Newsnight over on BBC Two. That's just getting underway with Victoria Derbyshire. The news continues, though, here on BBC One, because, of course, it's time to join our colleagues across the nations and regions for the news wherever you are this evening. From all of us, good night and have a good weekend.